The colony world of New Bizin was beautiful. It circled a golden star in a quiet corner of space, far from Earth but close to the hearts of everyone who lived there. 12 million people called it home. They had built cities with tall towers that touched the clouds. They had planted forests and made lakes where children could swim. It was humanity's proudest achievement, proof that people could travel to the stars and build something wonderful. Admiral Park Yuna was sitting in her office at Fleet Command on Earth when the message came. She was 51 years old. With gray hair she kept short and eyes that had seen many battles. But nothing had prepared her for what appeared on her screen that morning. The holographic display showed ships in orbit around New Bizin. They were not human ships. They were massive and dark, shaped like curved blades. There were hundreds of them, blocking out the stars. The Velith Dominion had arrived without warning. Park Yuna watched as beams of white light shot down from the alien ships. Wherever the beams touched, everything burned. Cities turned to glass. Forests became ash in seconds. The oceans boiled and turned to steam. 12 million voices cried out, and then there was silence. The transmission lasted only 4 minutes. When it ended, New Bizin was gone. Not conquered. Not damaged. Gone. The planet was now a dead ball of melted rock and black glass, spinning around its golden star like a tomb. Park Yuna did not cry. She did not scream. She sat very still and watched the recording 3 more times. Then she picked up her communicator and called an emergency meeting of every military leader on Earth. The Velith Dominion had ruled their part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They were tall creatures with gray skin and 4 arms. They believed they were the masters of all life, and for a very long time, no one had proven them wrong. When they found humanity spreading across the stars, they saw only a problem that needed to be solved. The message they sent after destroying New Bizin was short. It said, "Know your place. Do not expand further. Obey, or more of your worlds will burn." They expected humanity to be afraid. They expected humans to crawl back to Earth and hide. They expected begging and surrender. They did not understand humans at all. Captain Kang Do-yoon was on a patrol mission when New Bizin died. He was 38 years old, a tactical genius who had won many small battles against pirates and smugglers. His ship, the Unyielding Soul, was fast and strong, but it was nothing compared to the Velith Warfleet. When he received the news, he was eating dinner in his quarters. His wife Jaeyeon and his daughter Hannah lived on New Bizin. They had moved there 2 years ago because Jian wanted Hannah to grow up with grass under her feet and a real sky above her head, not the metal walls of a space station. Do-yoon read the message 5 times before his hands started shaking. He tried to call home, but there was no answer. There would never be an answer again. His first officer found him an hour later, still sitting at his table. The food was cold. His face was wet with tears, but his eyes were dry now. Something had changed in them. Something cold and patient had taken root. "Captain," the first officer said carefully, "what are your orders?" Do-yoon looked up. "Set course for Earth. Maximum speed. We have work to do." On Earth, something strange and wonderful was happening. For hundreds of years, nations fought each other. Countries had argued about borders and resources and old grudges. But when the news of New Bizin reached every corner of the planet, all of that stopped. Within 3 days, the leaders of every nation met in Geneva. They did not argue. They did not blame each other. They sat in a great hall and watched the recording of New Bizin dying. And when it was over, they voted. The vote was unanimous. Every hand went up. The United Terran Response Council was formed that day. Humanity would speak with one voice now, and that voice would not beg for mercy. Admiral Park Yuna was named Supreme Commander of all human forces. She stood before the council and gave her first order. Her voice was calm, but everyone in the room could hear the steel beneath her words. The Velith believe they have taught us a lesson. They believe we will be afraid. They are wrong. We will find them. We will reach them. And they will learn what it means to make humanity desperate. We are not a species that surrenders. We are not a species that forgets. 12 million of our people are dead. We will carry their memory with us to every star in the galaxy, and we will make sure no one ever forgets what happened today. The council chamber erupted in applause. But Park Yuna did not smile. Smiling was for later. For now, there was only the cold work of revenge. Across human space, the response was the same. Factories that had made consumer goods began making weapons. Scientists who had studied peaceful things now designed warships. Young people lined up at recruitment centers. So many that the lines stretched around entire city blocks. Captain Kang Do-yoon arrived at Earth and requested a meeting with Admiral Park. They sat together in her office. Two people who had never met but who understood each other perfectly. "I want to be part of whatever comes next," Do-yoon said. "I want to be there when we make them pay." Park Yuna studied him for a long moment. She could see the grief in his face. But she could also see something else. Focus. Determination. The kind of cold anger that does not fade with time, but grows sharper. "I lost my brother on New Bizen," she said quietly. His name was Park Junho. He was a teacher. He taught children about Earth's history, about where we came from. He believed humanity's best days were still ahead of us. Do-yoon nodded slowly. "My wife was a doctor. She helped people. My daughter was 7 years old. She liked to draw pictures of spaceships." They sat in silence for a moment, two strangers joined by loss. "The Velith have ruled their part of space for 10,000 years, Park Yuna said. They have destroyed countless species. They have never faced a real challenge. They don't know what it's like to fight an enemy that has nothing left to lose." She leaned forward. "I'm building something, Captain. A fleet unlike anything humanity has ever made. Ships designed not to survive, but to arrive. Crews who understand they probably won't come home. We're going to hit the Velith so hard that every species in the galaxy will feel it. And we're going to keep hitting them until there's nothing left." Do-yoon felt something stir in his chest. It was not happiness. It was not peace. It was purpose. "I want to lead one of those ships," he said. Park Yuna nodded. "I was hoping he would say that. Report to the training center tomorrow. We have a lot of work to do, and not much time to do it." As Do-yoon left her office, he paused at the door. "Admiral, when we win this war, what then?" Park Yuna looked at him with tired eyes. "Honestly, Captain, I haven't thought that far ahead. Right now, I'm focused on one thing only. Making sure the Velith understand what they've done. Making sure the galaxy knows that when you hurt humanity, we don't hide. We don't forgive. We remember." Outside the window, Earth turned slowly in the darkness of space. Blue oceans and green continents, wrapped in white clouds. Somewhere up there, past the moon and Mars and the asteroid belt, the Velith were celebrating their easy victory. They had no idea what was coming. 18 months passed after New Bizen burned. To the rest of the galaxy, it seemed like humanity had accepted defeat. Earth's visible fleet grew slowly, adding ships that looked clumsy and weak compared to Velith warships. The alien spies who watched human space sent back reports that made the Velith leaders laugh. High Sovereign Telmark sat on his throne on Velith Prime and read the latest intelligence reports. He was ancient by Velith standards, over 400 years old, with gray skin that had darkened to almost black with age. His forearms rested on the arms of his golden chair as he listened to his advisors. "The humans are building ships," one advisor said, "but they are primitive things. Slow engines, weak shields, They would break apart against our smallest patrol craft. Telmok made a sound of amusement. As I expected. They are clever animals, but animals nonetheless. They will hide on their little planet and trouble us no more. What Telmok did not know, what no Veloth spy had discovered, was that humanity's visible fleet was a lie. A careful, patient lie designed to make the enemy feel safe. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, where rocks the size of mountains floated in endless darkness, humanity was building its true fleet. The shipyards were hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids, invisible to sensors, producing no signals that could be detected. Thousands of workers lived there in secret, cut off from family and friends, dedicated to a single purpose. Chief Engineer Chilmere walked through the main construction bay, checking on her latest creation. She was only 32 years old, the youngest person ever to hold her position. Her black hair was tied back in a practical knot, and her face was thin from too many missed meals. She had not seen sunlight in 14 months. The ship in front of her was called the Hammer of Memory. It was ugly. There was no other word for it. Where Veloth ships were curved and graceful, this vessel was all hard angles and flat surfaces. It looked like someone had welded together a collection of weapons and added an engine as an afterthought. Admiral Park. Yuna stood beside Myray, studying the ship with approval. It won't win any beauty contests, Myray said, but it will do what we need. Tell me about it, Park Yuna said. Myray pointed at various sections as she spoke. The armor is layered. 3 meters of the densest alloy we can make. The shields are copies of Veleth technology, stolen by our intelligence teams and improved by our scientists. The weapons are a mix of energy beams and kinetic cannons. And the engines are designed for one thing only, getting there fast. She paused. There's no medical bay. Limited life support. Minimal crew quarters. These ships aren't designed to bring people home, Admiral. They're designed to arrive at the target and do as much damage as possible before they die. Park Yuna nodded slowly. And the crews understand this? Every volunteer is told exactly what they're signing up for. We turn away more people than we accept. Everyone wants to be part of this. In another part of the asteroid base, Lieutenant Basomi sat in a dark room filled with screens and blinking lights. She was 27 years old, small and thin, with eyes that seemed too large for her face. She had been a signals intelligence officer before New Bizon, spending her days listening to alien communications and trying to decode their meaning. Now she led a team of 50 specialists, whose job was to crack the Veloth communication network. It had taken them 8 months, but they had done it. Every Veloth message, every fleet order, every strategic plan now passed through Sami screens. She called up a holographic map of the galaxy and began marking locations. Red dots for Veloth military bases. Blue dots for their civilian worlds. Yellow dots for their supply routes. When she was finished, the map looked like it had a disease, covered in hundreds of colored points. 800 worlds, she said to her assistant, a young man named Yoon Jae-woo. That's how many planets the Veloth control. 800. Jae-woo looked at the map with worried eyes. How can we possibly fight that? Even with the secret fleet, we only have a few hundred ships. Somi smiled, but it was not a happy smile. We don't need to conquer 800 worlds. We just need to hurt them badly enough that they stop fighting. The Veloth have never lost a war. They don't know how to handle defeat. One good hit in the right place, and their whole empire might crack. She touched one of the red dots on the map. It was labeled Kethra Prime. This is where the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet is based. These are the ships that destroyed New Bizan. This is where we start. Back on Earth, the public fleet continued its slow growth. News programs showed footage of new ships being launched. Politicians gave speeches about rebuilding and moving forward, and to anyone watching, It looked like humanity was trying to forget the tragedy and return to normal life. But in secret meetings, in underground bunkers, the real planning was happening. Admiral Park Yuna met with her commanders every week to review the latest intelligence and update their strategies. Captain Kan Do-hyun had spent the 18 months training. He had learned everything there was to know about Velith tactics, their weapons, their weaknesses. He had run thousands of simulations, fighting and dying in virtual battles until he could predict what the enemy would do before they did it. His ship, the Unyielding Soul, had been upgraded with the new technology. It was faster now, stronger, more deadly. But more importantly, Do-hyun himself had changed. The grief was still there, buried deep, but it had transformed into something useful. Cold focus, patient determination. He met with Admiral Park in her office one evening, just before the fleet was ready to move. "Tomorrow we begin," Park Yuna said. 112 ships, jumping to Kethra Prime, will arrive at close range, closer than any fleet has ever tried. Some of our ships will be destroyed just from the jump itself. Dawn nodded. "I understand. Do you?" Park leaned forward. "We're not just going to fight them, Captain. We're going to show them something they've never seen before. An enemy that doesn't care about survival. An enemy that will crash ships into their stations just to breach their defenses. An enemy that fights like it has nothing to lose, because it doesn't." She stood and walked to her window, looking out at the stars. The Velith think war is a business. You win by being stronger, smarter, having better ships. They calculate costs and benefits. They retreat when the price is too high. She turned back to face him. "We're going to teach them a new kind of war. The kind where the price doesn't matter. The kind where surrender is not an option." Do-hyun thought about his wife and daughter. He thought about the 7 years of Hana's life, all the moments he would never see. Her first day of school. Her first friend. The pictures of spaceships she used to draw. "I'm ready," he said. In the days before the launch, a strange mood settled over the secret fleet. It was not fear, though fear was there. It was not excitement, though that was there too. It was something deeper, something almost religious. These people were about to do something that had never been done before. They were going to carry humanity's rage across the stars and deliver it directly to the enemy's door. Chief Engineer Cho Mei finished her final inspections. Every ship was ready. Every weapon was loaded. Every crew knew their mission. Lieutenant Bae Somi sent her final intelligence report. The Velith fleet at Kethra Prime was exactly where it was supposed to be. 40 warships, confident and unsuspecting. Admiral Park Yuna addressed her commanders one last time. Her voice was calm, but her words were fire. "Remember New Bizin. Remember the 12 million. We do not fight for glory or conquest. We fight because there is a debt that must be paid, and we are the collectors. Go now. Make them understand what they have done. Make them fear the stars." The ships began their final preparations. Engines warmed up. Crews took their positions. In the cold darkness of the asteroid belt, 112 vessels prepared to jump into history. The Velith had no idea they were coming. Warlord Veth was drinking victory wine when his world ended. He was the commander of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet, the force that had burned New Bizin, and he considered himself a hero of the Velith Dominion. His quarters on the orbital station above Kethra Prime were filled with trophies from conquered worlds, including a small flag from New Bizan that he had taken before the planet was glassed. He liked to look at that flag while he drank. It reminded him of his greatest achievement. The first warning came from a young censor, officer whose voice cracked as he spoke. "Warlord, we have contacts. Many contacts. Emerging from hyperspace." Veth frowned and set down his wine glass. "Enemy contacts in the heart of Velith territory?" Impossible. He walked to the command center, where his officers were staring at their screens with wide eyes. "Report," he commanded. 112 ships, Warlord. Human design. They appeared less than 10,000 kilometers from our outer defense ring. Veth felt a chill run down his back. 10,000 kilometers was nothing in space warfare. Standard doctrine called for ships to emerge from hyperspace at least 1,000,000 kilometers from enemy positions, to give themselves time to assess the situation and form up their forces. What the humans had done was suicide. "That's impossible," he said. "No one jumps that close. The navigation errors alone would destroy half their fleet. We're detecting debris, Warlord. At least 8 human ships were destroyed or damaged by the jump itself. But the rest are fully operational and they're not slowing down." On the bridge of the Unyielding Soul, Captain Kang Do-hyun watched his screens with cold satisfaction. 8 ships lost to the jump, just as they had expected. But 104 had made it through, and they were already firing. "All ships, this is Do-hyun. Execute attack pattern vengeance. No retreat, no surrender. For New Bizen, for the 12 million. The human fleet did not behave like any enemy the Velith had ever faced. Normal fleets would spread out, try to find advantageous positions, probe the enemy's defenses. The humans did none of this. They drove straight forward in tight formations, accepting terrible losses to close the distance. 3 human ships targeted a single Velith defense platform. The platform's weapons destroyed 2 of them, but the 3rd ship kept coming, its shields failing, its hull breaking apart. At the last moment, the human captain activated the self-destruct sequence. The explosion tore the platform in half. Warlord Veth watched in horror as this scene repeated itself across his defensive line. The humans were using their ships as weapons, as missiles with crews inside them. It was madness. It was waste. It went against every principle of space warfare, and it was working. "Focus fire on the lead ship," Veth ordered. "The one designated Unyielding Soul. Destroy their commander." 30 Velith warships turned their weapons on Do-hyun's vessel. The Unyielding Soul shields flared under the assault, and warning lights began flashing across every console. "Captain, we can't take much more of this," his first officer reported. Do-hyun nodded calmly. "Signal the second wave. Tell them the gap is almost open. Then order all ships in Group Alpha to execute Final Protocol." Final Protocol was simple. The 12 ships of Group Alpha pointed their bows at the largest Velith warships and activated their engines at maximum power. They could not survive the enemy fire long enough to reach their targets, so they did not try to survive. Instead, each ship diverted all power to its forward shields and engines, creating temporary battering rams that slammed into the Velith. Formation. 11 of the 12 ships were destroyed before impact. But one made it through. The cruiser Forgotten Promise struck the Velith battleship Eternal Victory at full speed. Both ships died in a ball of fire that was visible from the planet's surface. The gap in the Velith formation was now wide enough for the second wave. Admiral Park Yuna had remained at the secret base in the asteroid belt, coordinating the battle through faster-than-light communication drones. She watched the tactical display and felt pride and grief in equal measure. So many ships lost. So many good people gone. But they were winning. "Second wave, launch," she ordered. 40 more human ships jumped into the battle, arriving in the gap that the first wave had created. These ships were different. They carried the heavy weapons, the planet crackers, the tools of judgment. On the surface of Kethra Prime, the Velith civilians looked up at the sky and saw lights flashing among the stars. Most of them did not understand what was happening. They had lived their whole lives believing that the Velith military was unbeatable, that their world was safe. The truth was about to change everything. Warlord Veth realized he was losing. He had lost 15 warships and all his defense platforms. His remaining 25 vessels were scattered and damaged, unable to form a coherent defense. And the human second wave was now in perfect position to strike the planet. All ships, retreat to Rally Point 7, he ordered. It was the first time in his career he had ever given such a command. But the humans did not let them go. Captain Kang Do-hyun, his ship badly damaged but still fighting, led a pursuit force that chased the retreating Veleth. His weapons crews, exhausted and wounded, kept firing until their guns overheated. "They're running," his first officer said. "We won." "Not yet," Do-hyun replied. "We need to send a message." Something they'll never forget. The second wave had taken position above Kethra Prime's main continent. This was where the Veleth military headquarters was located, along with the barracks that housed the soldiers who had invaded. New Bizon. The human ships did not target cities or civilian areas. They were not here to commit the same crime the Veleth had committed, but they were here to leave a mark. One by one, the human ships launched kinetic bombardment rounds. These were not nuclear weapons or energy beams. They were simple metal rods, accelerated to incredible speeds. When they hit the ground, they created craters the size of small towns. The bombardment was precise. Military bases were destroyed. The headquarters building vanished in a cloud of dust and fire. Supply depots, training facilities, weapons factories, all of them were erased. And then came the final message. Lieutenant Baesomi had designed this part herself. Special rounds were fired in a carefully calculated pattern, striking the empty plains outside the ruined military headquarters. When the dust cleared, words were visible from orbit, carved into the earth by kinetic fire. We remember, Warlord Veth, watching from his retreating flagship, saw those words appear on his screens. His forehands were shaking. His wine-colored skin had gone pale. "Get me a channel to the High Sovereign," he said. "He needs to see this." The Battle of Kethra Prime was over. Humanity had lost 63 ships and over 10,000 lives. But they had destroyed 40 Veleth warships, countless defense platforms, and an entire military infrastructure. More importantly, they had proven something that the galaxy had never seen before. The Veleth could be beaten. Captain Kang Do-hyun stood on the bridge of his broken ship and looked at the words burning on the planet below. He thought about his wife, Jeon, who had healed people. He thought about his daughter, Hannah, who had drawn pictures of spaceships. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly. His first officer looked at him. "Captain, we need to return for repairs. The ship can barely move." Do-hyun nodded slowly. "Yes, we go home. We rebuild. And then we come back." Again and again, until they understand. The unyielding soul limped away from Kethra Prime, joining the surviving human ships as they prepared to jump home. Behind them, the planet burned with the message that would soon spread across the galaxy. In the Veleth capital, High Sovereign Telmok watched the battle recordings with growing horror. He had lived for 400 years. He had seen 100 enemies crushed beneath the Dominion's power. But he had never seen anything like this. An enemy that sacrificed itself willingly, that used death as a weapon, that refused to retreat even when victory was impossible. For the first time in his long life, Telmok felt something he did not recognize. Fear. He called an emergency meeting of his war council. When his advisors arrived, they found the High Sovereign pacing back and forth, his forearms gesturing wildly. "What are these creatures?" he demanded. "What kind of species throws away its own ships, its own people, just to hurt us? This is not war. This is madness." One of his advisors, an old female named Velka, spoke carefully. "Perhaps, High Sovereign, we should consider negotiation. If the humans are willing to accept such losses for a single victory, imagine what they would do to reach our homeworld." Telmok turned on her with fury in his eyes. Negotiate? With animals? With primitives who have only been traveling the stars for a few centuries? Never. We will crush them. We will find their secret shipyards and destroy them. We will burn Earth itself if we must. But even as he spoke, Telmok could not shake the image of those words, carved into his military world. We remember, and somewhere in the back of his ancient mind, a voice whispered that perhaps, just perhaps, the Velith had made a terrible mistake. 6 months after the Battle of Kethra Prime, the galaxy had changed. News of the human victory spread through every trade route and communication network. Species that had lived under Velith rule for thousands of years whispered the story to each other in secret. Slaves who had never known freedom began to dream of it. The humans had struck 17 Velith systems since their first attack. Each battle followed the same terrible pattern. Human ships would arrive without warning, fight with suicidal determination, and leave behind the same message carved into the earth. We remember, on a small mining world called Grathtok, workers from a dozen conquered species gathered in their cramped quarters to share rumors. They spoke in whispers, afraid of the Velith guards who patrolled the tunnels. I heard they destroyed the shipyard at Mekaran, said an elderly worker with blue skin and 6 arms. 30 warships, gone in one night. My cousin's master told him that the humans don't take prisoners, another worker added. They fight until their ships are breaking apart, and then they crash into the enemy. They don't care if they die. A young female with spotted fur and large eyes listened to these stories with growing wonder. Why? She asked. Why would anyone fight like that? The elderly worker looked at her with something that might have been hope. Because they remember. The Velith destroyed one of their worlds, killed 12 million of their people. And now the humans are making them pay. On Velith Prime, the mood was very different. High Sovereign Telmok had called an emergency summit of the Galactic Council, a body that existed mainly to give the appearance of fairness while the Velith did whatever they wanted. Representatives from 72 species gathered in the Great Hall, sitting in rows of seats that faced the High Sovereign's throne. Telmok stood before them, his 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of authority. We face a threat to all civilized species, he announced. The humans have proven themselves to be dangerous savages, willing to use tactics that no reasonable people would consider. We call upon all members of this council to unite against them. The representatives murmured among themselves. Many of them had lived in fear of the Velith for generations. They had watched their own worlds conquered, their own people enslaved. And now they were being asked to fight for their oppressors. Before anyone could respond, the doors of the Great Hall opened. A single human walked in, moving with calm confidence through the rows of alien representatives. He was old, perhaps 70 Earth years, with white hair and a face lined by time and grief. His name was Otejun, and he was humanity's ambassador to the galaxy. I apologize for my late arrival, Tejun said, his voice carrying clearly through the hall. The journey from Earth is long, and I am not as young as I used to be. Telmok's eyes narrowed. You dare enter this chamber? Your species has committed acts of war against the Dominion. You should be executed where you stand. Tejun smiled, but there was no warmth in it. If you wish to execute me, go ahead. It won't stop what's coming. It won't bring back your ships or your military bases. And it certainly won't make humanity forget. He walked to the center of the chamber where a holographic projector stood. Without asking permission, he activated it. The image that appeared showed New Bizin as it had been before the attack. Beautiful cities, green forests, blue lakes reflecting the golden sun. This was our colony, Tejun said. 12 million people lived there, families, children, teachers and doctors and engineers. They had done nothing to the Velith. They posed no threat to anyone. The image changed, showing the Velith fleet arriving. The representatives watched in silence as the planet burned. The Velith did this because they could, Tajin continued. Because they believed we were too weak to fight back. Because they thought our lives were worth nothing. He turned to face the assembled species. I am not here to ask for your help. Humanity does not need allies to fight this war. We have already proven that. Then why are you here? Telmok demanded. To give you a warning. Taijun's voice hardened. Stay out of our way. Do not help the Velith. Do not shelter their ships. Do not give them supplies or information. If you remain neutral, you have nothing to fear from us. He paused, letting his words sink in. But if any of you choose to stand with the creatures who murdered our people, then your worlds will burn next. We are not asking for permission. We are informing you of reality. The chamber exploded in noise. Representatives shouted questions and protests. Telmok's guards moved toward Tajin, weapons raised. But before they could reach him, something unexpected happened. The representative from the Varathi Union, a species that had been conquered by the Velith 3,000 years ago, stood up. He was a tall being with silver skin and deep purple eyes. I call for a vote, he said loudly, on the question of neutrality in the human-Velith conflict. More representatives stood. The Krell Confederation, the mining guilds of Sector 7, the Free Traders Alliance. One by one, species that had been oppressed by the Velith for centuries rose to support the call. Telmok watched in disbelief. This had never happened before. The council always did what the Velith wanted. That was the entire purpose of the council. The vote was unanimous. 71 species chose neutrality. Only the Velith voted against. Tajin bowed to the assembly. Thank you. You have made the wise choice. He looked at Telmok with cold eyes. We will remember this as well. The galaxy will remember who stood aside and who tried to help our enemy. He walked out of the chamber without waiting for a response. On the flagship, Unyielding Soul, now repaired and upgraded, Captain Kan Do-hyun received news of the council vote. He shared it with his crew, and for the first time in months, there was something like hope in their eyes. The galaxy is turning against them, his first officer said. Even their own allies are abandoning them. Do-hyun nodded slowly. It's not enough. The Velith still have 800 worlds. They still have the largest fleet in the galaxy. We've hurt them, but we haven't beaten them. What do we do next? Do-hyun pulled up a star map on his screen. At the center was Velith Prime, the jeweled heart of the Dominion. We keep fighting. We keep hitting them. Every military base, every shipyard, every supply depot. We make them bleed until they can't bleed anymore. Back on Earth, Admiral Park Yuna met with the United Terran Response Council to present her strategy for the next phase of the war. The secret shipyards had been working constantly for 2 years now, producing new vessels to replace the ones lost in battle. Humanity's fleet had grown to over 400 ships, each one carrying the names of new Bizan victims painted on its hull. The Velith are scared, Park Yuna told the council. Our intelligence reports show that they're pulling ships back from the outer systems, concentrating their forces around their core worlds. They're afraid we'll strike at Velith Prime itself, will we? Asked one of the council members. Park Yuna considered the question carefully. Eventually, but not yet. First, we need to weaken them more. Cut their supply lines. Destroy their shipyards. Free the species they've enslaved. Chief Engineer Cho Mai-rei, attending the meeting via holographic link from her asteroid shipyard, added her own report. We've developed a new class of ship. Faster than anything we've built before. Designed for hidden-run attacks on enemy logistics. Lieutenant Bae Somi, now promoted to commander, presented the latest intelligence. The Velith communication network shows increasing signs of panic. High Sovereign Telmok has executed 3 of his own admirals for failing to stop our attacks. The military leadership is in chaos. Park Yuna listened to all of this and felt something she had not felt since New Bizen died. Not happiness, not peace, but satisfaction. The plan was working. 6 more months, she said. We keep up the pressure for 6 more months. By then, they'll be ready for the final blow. On distant worlds, in slave camps and occupied territories, people began to resist. The story of humanity's war had given them courage. Small rebellions broke out. Supplies meant for Velith forces were destroyed or stolen. Information was passed to human intelligence agents. The galaxy was waking up. After 10,000 years of Velith dominance, something new was happening. Species that had accepted their place in the natural order were beginning to ask questions. If the humans could fight back, why couldn't they? High Sovereign Telmok sat alone in his throne room, surrounded by the trophies of 10,000 years of conquest. He had not slept properly in months. Every night, he saw the same images in his dreams. Human ships crashing into his fleet. Words carved in fire across his worlds. We remember. For the first time in his long life, Telmok understood that he might lose. That the Velith dominion, which had seemed eternal, could actually fall. He called his most trusted advisor, the old female Velka. Tell me the truth, he said. Can we win this war? Velka was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, High Sovereign. The humans fight differently than any enemy we've faced. They don't care about losses. They don't negotiate. They just keep coming. What do they want? Surely there must be something we can offer them. Territory? Resources? Slaves? Velka shook her head slowly. We destroyed their colony, High Sovereign. We killed 12 million of their people. I do not think there is anything we can offer that would satisfy them. Telmok leaned back in his throne, suddenly feeling every one of his 400 years. Then what will satisfy them? Velka looked at him with ancient eyes. I think, she said carefully, they want us to understand. To truly understand what we did. And perhaps to suffer as they suffered. The High Sovereign said nothing. Outside his window, the stars shone peacefully as they had for billions of years. But somewhere out there, human ships were moving, planning, preparing. The fear was spreading. And it was only the beginning. The day of the final battle arrived on a morning that looked like any other. Stars burned in the endless darkness of space. Planets turned on their ancient paths. And 400 human warships prepared to jump into the heart of enemy territory. Admiral Park Yuna stood on the bridge of her flagship. The 12 million souls. The name was painted on the hull in letters 3 meters tall, and below it, in smaller script, were the names of every person who had died on New Bizen. Engineers had worked for weeks to fit all 12 million names onto the ship's surface. The result was a vessel covered in memory, a flying monument to the dead. Park Yuna was 63 years old now. Her hair had gone completely gray, and her face showed the weight of 3 years of war. But her eyes were clear, and her voice was steady as she addressed her fleet. Today we end this. Today we take the war to Velith Prime itself. Many of us will not return. I will not lie to you about that. But what we do today will echo through history. Our children and our children's children will remember this day as the moment when humanity showed the galaxy what we are made of. She paused, looking at the holographic display that showed her entire fleet assembled and ready. Remember why we fight. Remember New Bizen. Remember the 12 million. And remember that no matter what happens today, we have already won. We have proven that humanity does not bow. We have proven that our spirit cannot be broken. Now let us prove one thing more. Let us prove that when you make humanity your enemy, there is nowhere in the galaxy you can hide. The fleet jumped. Velith Prime was the most beautiful world in the Dominion. Its cities were ancient and magnificent, built over 10,000 years of unbroken civilization. Its orbital defenses were the strongest ever constructed. Every remaining Velith warship had been called back to protect the homeworld. Creating a defensive ring of over 200 vessels high, Sovereign Telmok watched the human fleet arrive from his command bunker deep beneath the surface. He had planned for this moment. He had gathered every ship, every weapon, every soldier. The humans had won their small battles, but this would be different. This would be the end of their foolish rebellion. "Fire all weapons," he ordered. "Destroy them." The space around Velith Prime erupted in light. Energy beams and missiles filled the darkness, creating a web of death that nothing should have been able to penetrate. But the humans kept coming. Captain Kang Do-hyun led the first assault wave from the bridge of the Dawn of Reckoning, a massive assault carrier that had been built specifically for this battle. His ship absorbed hit after hit, its shields failing, its armor melting, but it did not stop. "All squadrons, launch," he ordered. "Head for the gaps in their formation. Create openings for the second wave." Hundreds of smaller craft poured out of the human carriers, swarming toward the Velith defensive line. Each one was piloted by a volunteer who knew they were unlikely to survive. Each one carried enough explosives to cripple a Velith warship. The battle became chaos. Ships crashed into each other. Explosions bloomed and faded in the vacuum. Voices screamed orders and farewells over the communication channels. Du Hyan watched his tactical display as red icons representing human ships winked out one by one. 50 lost, 70, 100. But for every human ship destroyed, 2 Velith vessels died with them. "Captain," his first officer reported, her voice strained. "The Velith flagship is directly ahead. Bearing 047. Range 15,000 kilometers. Do-hyun looked at the display. The flagship was the largest ship in the Velith fleet, a massive vessel called the Pride of Empire. It was Telmok's command ship, the symbol of Velith dominance. "Plot an intercept course," Do-hyun said calmly. "All power to engines." His first officer turned to look at him. "Captain, at that range, with our current damage, we won't survive the approach." Do-hyun smiled for the first time in years. "I know." He activated the fleet communication channel. His voice reached every human ship still fighting. "This is Captain Kang Do-hyun. I'm making my final approach to the enemy flagship. To my fellow commanders, it has been an honor to serve with you. To the people of Earth, remember us. Remember what we did here today." He paused, thinking of Jian and Hana, his wife's smile, his daughter's drawings, the life they should have had together. "To the Velith, I have a message. We came for you. We found you. And now you will learn what happens when you make humanity choose between fear and fury." The Dawn of Reckoning accelerated to maximum speed, diving straight toward the Pride of Empire. Velith weapons tore into the human ship, ripping away sections of hull, destroying weapons and engines. But the human vessel kept coming, held together by nothing but momentum and determination. At the last moment, Do-hyun activated the self-destruct sequence. The Dawn of Reckoning's antimatter core detonated inside the Velith flagship's shields. Both ships vanished in a ball of fire, so bright it could be seen from the planet's surface. The explosion tore a massive hole in the Velith defensive line. Human ships poured through, their weapons blazing. High Sovereign Telmok watched from his bunker as his fleet collapsed. Ship after ship was destroyed. His admirals begged for permission to retreat, but there was nowhere to retreat to. This was their homeworld, their final stand. "Impossible," he whispered. "This is impossible." The battle lasted 9 hours. When it was over, The Velith fleet had been reduced to scattered wreckage. The orbital defenses were silent. Human drop pods were falling through the atmosphere like rain, carrying soldiers to secure the surface. Admiral Park Yuna led the final assault from a shuttle, landing in the ruins of the capital city. She was met by Commander Beisomi, Chief Engineer Cho Mai-rei, and Ambassador O Tai-jin, who had insisted on being present for the moment of victory. The Velith military has surrendered, Somi reported. Ground resistance is collapsing everywhere. They want to negotiate. Park Yuna nodded slowly. She felt tired. More tired than she had ever been in her life. Take me to their leader. They found High Sovereign Telmok in his throne room, surrounded by the bodies of his guards who had died trying to protect him. The ancient Velith sat slumped on his golden throne, his forearms hanging limp at his sides. His eyes, once proud and cruel, were now filled with confusion and fear. How? He asked as the humans entered. We are the Velith. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have crushed every enemy who rose against us. How did you do this? Park Yuna walked slowly toward him, her boots echoing on the marble floor. She stopped a few meters away and looked at him for a long moment. You killed 12 million of our people, she said quietly. You destroyed our colony and expected us to accept it. You thought we were weak because we were young. You thought we would give up because the odds were against us. She shook her head. You didn't understand what you were dealing with. Humanity doesn't give up. We don't accept defeat. When you burned New Bizin, you didn't break us. You united us. You gave us a purpose that nothing could stop. Telmok stared at her. What do you want? What will end this? Park Yuna turned to look at her companions. Cho Mai-rei, who had built the ships that made victory possible. Beisomi, who had found the enemy's weaknesses. O Tai-jin, who had turned the galaxy against the Dominion. And somewhere out there, the spirit of Kang Do-yoon, who had given everything to open the door to victory. We wanted our people back, Park Yuna said. But that's not possible. So instead, you will give us this. She listed her demands in a calm, steady voice. The Velith Dominion would be dissolved. Every slave species would go free. Every conquered world would be returned to its original people. The Velith military would be dismantled. And every year, on the anniversary of New Bizin's destruction, the entire Velith civilization would observe a day of silence. They would remember what they had done. They would teach their children, and their children's children, that some crimes cannot be forgiven. Telmok listened to each demand, his face growing paler with each word. You're asking us to destroy everything we've built, he said. 10,000 years of civilization. No, Park Yuna replied. We're asking you to pay for what you did. The price of 12 million lives. The price of making humanity remember. She turned and walked toward the door. You have 1 hour to accept. If you refuse, we will continue until there is nothing left to accept. In the end, Telmok agreed. He had no choice. His fleet was gone, his army was defeated, and the humans showed no sign of stopping. The documents were signed in the ruins of his throne room, witnessed by representatives from across the galaxy who had traveled to see the fall of the Dominion. 50 years later, the memorial on New Bizin covered an entire continent. 12 million names were carved into white stone that caught the light of the golden sun. Visitors came from across the galaxy, representatives of species who now lived free, who traded openly, who raised their children without fear. At the center of the memorial stood 5 statues. Admiral Park Yuna, who had led the war from beginning to end. Captain Kang Do-yoon, who had given his life to open the path to victory. Chief Engineer Cho Mai-rei, who had built the weapons of revenge. Commander Beisomi, who had found the enemy's secrets. Ambassador O Tai-jin, who had turned the galaxy against the oppressor. They stood together in bronze, looking up at the stars they had helped to free. The inscription at their feet was simple. We remember. We always will. And across the galaxy, in 1,000 languages, on 1,000 worlds, the lesson was passed from generation to generation. Do not harm humanity. Do not make them remember. For their memory is long, their fury is patient, and their stars burn with the light of those who will never be forgotten. The war was over. The Velith dominion was gone, and humanity had claimed its place among the stars, not as conquerors, but as the species that would not be broken. The species that remembered, always.